Welcome to Google Cloud Security Talks, a special web series where you'll get a variety of expert insights into the Google Cloud security ecosystem. My name is Ansh Patnaik, and I'm part of the Google Cloud Security Business Unit, focused specifically on Chronicle, which is a petabyte scale security analytics platform for threat investigation and hunting. As you may have heard in the opening session, today Chronicle announced the introduction of Google scale threat analysis with the debut of its new rules engine called Chronicle Detect. Chronicle Detect is a rules engine that operates at the speed of search, includes a rule language or syntax based on one of the most widely used detection languages in the world, and unique threat intelligence from Chronicle's elite threat research team. For those of you who are new to Chronicle, Chronicle is part of the Google Cloud Security Business Unit, which as a whole is focused on protecting and modernizing security for organizations no matter where they are in their modernization journey. The portfolio of products in the GCP Security Business Unit fall into two buckets: products that make Google Cloud the most secure cloud platform to run workloads on, as well as products that secure organizations in place or anywhere, which means on premises, in other clouds, or in a hybrid environment. Chronicle falls into that second bucket, and that means it is relevant regardless of whether your infrastructure modernization efforts are happening in place in the cloud or in hybrid mode. Fundamentally, the problem that Chronicle solves is one of security data overload. That is, specifically, your infrastructure and perhaps even more so your security tools generate much more security telemetry today than what typical SIM log management solutions were designed to handle. And we see three key challenges when it comes to other alternatives towards leveraging security telemetry for the purpose of investigation and detection. First, the other options don't scale. For example, EDR or even emerging XDR solutions generate lots of rich telemetry that's critical for modern threat detection and investigation. But natively, they just aren't designed for data management at scale. That's just not their focus. So maybe you retain the data in those tools for a few days and then push the data to traditional SIM and log management tools. But then you face the same problem. Searches take hours or days, and the amount of hardware required is onerous to procure, to maintain, and to scale. Second, other options are too expensive. In addition to infrastructure costs, you're also going to pay for each byte that you ingest. So the more you want to analyze, the more you pay. And you're forced to limit the types of data collected as well as the duration for which you retain all of your telemetry. And third, other options are ineffective at detecting modern threats. They struggle to link events together, they don't make use of threat intelligence in the right ways, and their rules engines are designed for the wrong data sources and for yesterday's attacks. So as a result, they miss a lot of threats. We believe organizations want something better, and security analytics focused on unleashing data sources like EDR, like XDR, like user centric SaaS telemetry, DNS, proxy logs, just as examples, is where everyone is trying to go. The Chronicle Security Analytics platform was built directly on core Google infrastructure, so it operates at Google speed. Just imagine having a system that scales infinitely, that you don't have to tune, and that offers investigation, hunting, and detection capabilities in seconds rather than days or weeks. Second, Chronicle offers a disruptive pricing model that is not based on data volume or usage. You are incentivized to send all your data, especially the value, but unfortunately also high volume data sources like EDR that have evaded analysis for most organizations. And all your data is retained for a full year by default in hot state. And finally, Chronicle has invested heavily in automated curation and enrichment, as well as simplicity of access. Chronicle enriches telemetry and links events together automatically. It then correlates those enriched events and retroactively maps them to all incoming threat intelligence. And it provides a powerful and flexible syntax to analyze the data. So you get clear signals instead of missed threats. Now, Chronicle entered the market with those key advantages around scale, performance, and cost a couple of years ago, with an initial focus on threat investigation and threat hunting. And we have seen rapid adoption and disruptive outcomes for that initial use case. You can read and hear the full detail around outcomes and impact at Fortune 500 companies like Quanta Services and NCR, as well as smaller companies like Aspen in their respective case studies posted on our website. In fact, the very next session here at Cloud Security Talks is actually a Chronicle customer panel, in which you'll also hear from another three Chronicle customers. For now, though, I'm going to summarize the key impact areas and magnitude of impact that we generally see. I won't go through everything you're seeing on the slide, but let me highlight two or three key impact areas that our customers can expect and are realizing. First, total cost of ownership, which is a big one, especially now. We conduct TCO workshops with most organizations, and on average, we expect a 3 to 6x or 300% to 600% lower TCO than other options being evaluated. And this was recently validated by a third party research analyst group, and you can access that resource as well on our website. Um, in security, recruitment and retention are massive challenges. So, driving productivity of security analysts is a common outcome that customers are looking for and, in fact, are realizing with Chronicle. A great example is a Fortune 50 healthcare sector leader that was able to entirely shift triage of a major threat vector that they encountered every day from scarce level 2 SOC resources entirely into the hands of their level 1 analysts, while also introducing a 15-minute hard limit on investigations. And that case study is also on the Chronicle website. And just as another key area of impact, I'll touch on performance. Searching through hundreds of terabytes for a mid-sized enterprise, which is something these days you can easily get to over the course of a year, or petabytes of data for large organizations, has historically been an exercise in futility. Many organizations don't even have the data for an entire year. And if they do, it can take hours to days to search against that data to look to, let's say, look for just an IOC match, let alone a more sophisticated correlation rule. With Chronicle, the gains here are huge. It's common to see a 10x improvement in key SOC metrics today, like TTI or time to investigate. Now, so far, we've talked about the fundamental problem that Chronicle solves and the impact it has had on security investigations. Let's now go back to today's announcement on our new rules engine, Chronicle Detect, and take a look at some of the differentiators and impact areas that we expect on the threat detection front. Earlier today, we announced the expanded focus of the Chronicle Security Analytics platform beyond threat investigations and into the realm and arena of threat detection. Let me drill down into the announcement in some more detail. The crux of the announcement is the rules engine, which replaces stale detection constructs that are out there with new ones that are optimized for modern threat detection. For example, being able to detect event sequences that represent attack framework threat stages playing out in an environment. Second, it introduces a new threat definition syntax called YARA-L, or YARA for logs. YARA for logs enables very efficient encapsulation of advanced threat detection logic. And it benefits from the same automation and enrichment in our data model that has been a source of abstraction and analyst productivity in threat investigations that we've been focused on in the past. And third, we're accompanying the core engine and the rule syntax with a very rich SOC content library. This includes support for the SOC Prime Rules Marketplace, which is one of the largest content hubs for threat rules. And that's made possible through a converter that translates rules across different rules languages or syntaxes that are out there. For Chronicle customers, this means existing rules will be easily importable from your existing SIM tools into Chronicle, so you wouldn't have to rebuild them. The content also comes from Chronicle's own research team, and the output of their research will be in the form of unique threat intelligence as well as threat detection rules pre-mapped to emerging attack threat techniques, as well as technique sequences. And a couple of additional notes on Chronicle Detect. A common question that we get is about hooking Chronicle on the investigation side and now on the detection side into existing playbooks, into existing orchestration and SOAR tools. In recent months, we've already built integrations into market leading tools like Palo Alto, Cortex XSOAR, and others. Those and upcoming SOAR integrations apply not just to our existing investigative hunting capabilities, but entirely apply and extend to Chronicle Detect as well. And lastly, all the capabilities of the Chronicle platform, spanning investigation and detection, will be available globally as we recently expanded data center support for Chronicle in Europe as well as the Asia Pacific region. So I said quite a bit about Chronicle Detect there. Let me just summarize the key differentiators. First, we're bringing the speed and scale of Chronicle, which is built on core Google infrastructure, to threat detection. Second, Chronicle is built by and for security practitioners, and the rules engine is exposed through a rules syntax that I mentioned called Yara for logs. Uh, and that is one of the most widely used detection languages in the security community. So clearly something we've built on that's focused on leveraging what security practitioners are already doing. And third, Chronicle Detect comes with a powerful content library backed by a world class research team and a syntax in itself that's very powerful and flexible. Those are the key differentiators. So that was a quick overview of Chronicle and a closer look at today's announcement on Chronicle's expansion into threat detection. Before we shift to the live demo, if you're interested in learning more about Chronicle, I'd encourage you to visit our website at chronicle.security, where you can access lots of great content and resources. I'd also like to encourage you to watch the very next session here at Google Cloud Security Talks. It's a panel discussion with three Chronicle customers, including Better Cloud, Groupon, and Paradigm Quest, where we'll be talking about their experience with Chronicle. Two of those customers were actually early access design partners for Chronicle Detect. So you'll also hear about that experience. That should be a great session. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Svetla Yankova, who leads the customer experience engineering team at Chronicle. She's going to walk you through a live demo of Chronicle with a focus on the capabilities of Chronicle Detect. Enjoy that demo, and I'll see you on the other side.
Hello, my name is Svetla Yankova and I'm responsible for customer engineering for Google Cloud Security products. Today, I want to talk to you about some of the innovation we're doing with Chronicle. In this demo, I want to go through an example of how you can detect modern threats. I'll start with showing you a very innocent looking document on the surface. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is this is not so innocent. This is detected as Emotet, and it's part of a recent revival of a campaign that's been wreaking havoc on companies all summer. If the user clicks on Enable Editing, they wouldn't see anything, but under the hood, this will use a macro and it will launch a PowerShell, which will connect to a malicious server and then do a number of other bad things. Now, while this is all fun to explore, there are a couple of reasons why even after spending millions of dollars, defenders still have a hard time with these types of attacks. The biggest reason is only having partial visibility. If I'm a defender, even if I know my adversary well, which by the way I don't have time to do, I just don't have the data. Endpoint data is being thrown away, NDR data is being thrown away, cloud and SaaS data are intermittently being thrown away, things like DNS, email are not stored for a very long time, usually, you name it. I could have indicators of any bad thing in the world and it still wouldn't do me much good because I don't have the data to find it in. The second reason Why detecting these types of modern attacks is hard is because searches are slow and the detections we do today are really very predictable to actors. Even if you have all the data, your searches and detections, they may take minutes or even hours. And at that point, you're not at an advantage. If a Google search took me that long, I'll just give up on searching things, and then my knowledge of the world would be limited. We believe that faster searches lead to productive and happier teams, but they also lead to this pattern recognition, this knowledge building that can very quickly lead to better automations, better detections, better learning. And these types of things are very difficult for an actor to avoid. This is the guiding principle and vision behind Chronicle and behind the work we're doing with Chronicle Detect. Frameworks such as MITRE ATT&CK, for example, give us really great maps of all the known ways that actors have been seen operating in the wild. And they reduce an infinite problem to a smaller, more finite set. Now you might think, wow, okay, these are what, 176 boxes? And maybe all I need to do is just check those boxes and everything will be good. And yes, in some sense that is true, but in reality, doing MITRE ATT&CK at scale is really, really hard for almost each and every individual one of these boxes. In that example, you saw in action some of the main techniques highlighted here, that are simple but yet really, really hard to catch. Now let's switch over to Chronicle. When I log in, I see a petabyte plus of data, and this should really become the new normal. This should really be the standard for professionals to look at that amount of data. And not only that, but we think searches should be super fast in that type of system. Now, let me put in that domain we saw in our emotet, that bad command and control server that we just saw. You can see that I can immediately get a story. What happened? What's the timeline? Who saw it? Who didn't see it? Who accessed it? I'm not chasing down a random 10.0. whatever IP address. I'm not staring through a grid of stuff. Data should make timelines and stories with who and what and how. You don't really look at Facebook and you're like, oh my god, how cute, user with IP 1234 is now married to user with IP 1235. Let me go and query the users table to see who they are. Then let me go and query the comments table to figure out what others have to say about this. Like in the real world, this is ridiculous, and yet that's kind of the standard we have in security today. Okay, well, like, searching is great, and semantic understanding of the data within timelines is really groundbreaking once you really get used to it. But let's be real, you wouldn't have time to find every single bad indicator out there. You need a more scalable detection technology. Let's take a look at some of those here. A very important design principle we have is what we call retroactive evaluation. If you look here, we evaluate bad stuff thrown at the system both forward-looking, which is easy, as well as back in time, which nobody really does. It's easy for an attacker to change something forward in time. Something gets published in a feed, I just change my IPs and domains. But they can't turn back time and unuse what they already used. Okay, now let's take a look at our first MITRE ATT&CK technique that we saw, that spear phishing attachment, that attachment email. It is something you cannot block. You can't block emails, you can't block attachments or anything like that. You need to get more surgical, more specific. It's extremely common to have to trust security solutions such as your email gateway or email provider or your AV or your proxy to catch this type of stuff. In fact, think about it. What else could you really use, right? Especially if you didn't have visibility across all the data. Now, while a bad attack can be hiding behind any of these alerts, the problem is when you pop out the alerts, it might just be mumbo jumbo, Something somewhere seemed odd. There's an email sender, there's a recipient, there's a subject. This might be good, might be bad. It might need some investigating. I might start following a trail here and find out what happened. But in a slow system with partial visibility, that becomes nightmare. This email might be bad and yet nothing may have happened. The user didn't click on it. They didn't enable editing. That's all things you have to find out. To add more to this problem, it's not like security was a walk in the park before, but with the pandemic that has been going on, this has created a unique challenge for defenders. Nobody's really on the network anymore for most enterprises. Visibility is really, really hard. In this example, this means that I get an email alert that will give me the IP address of the user's ISP somewhere, and you can't really do much with that. Well, with Chronicle, we did some really smart things. We fused the data together, even data that has different identifier, like a Windows SID or a username or an email. And we sort out through things like Active Directory dumps and Azure AD and DHCP, and we do that with zero work from the side of the customer. Because of that, I'm able to see a VPN login that has my username, next to an email log that doesn't, next to a proxy log that does. And I can also see a few other things that could really make for a powerful detection. Now, let's look at a device in this example. I'm going to zone in on the device that this happened, where I opened my email message. But now I have a full timeline, and I have even full Tanium streaming telemetry from the endpoint directly to the cloud with no data being hogged by the network, and this is showing a full picture. And Chronicle will also call out things that we consider weird, like this domain is low prevalence. That means it's rare. Powerful indicator to use for detection. This domain is also new to the enterprise. That's also interesting. There's a file detected through one of our partners. Also interesting. Not to mention this PowerShell here is really something you should not be getting used to seeing. This probably gives you the idea that it's not so hard to see patterns of weird or patterns of bad. And with Chronicle, we paid incredible attention to detail in showing you data in which these types of things become obvious within a timeline. We could have easily just built a boring grid, but we wanted to really bring this fourth dimension, so we spent the extra time to do that. And for a simple reason, what is obvious to human eyes can be taught to machines. That's what Chronicle Detect is all about. Bringing scale so that you can express things in detection that you couldn't express before. Now, let me look at some of the detections that we have and see how they kind of correspond to some of the MITRE attack categories and techniques we saw. This first detection is a typical rule you will find in almost any company. Chronicle Detect will support these types of legacy rules, but can do a lot more. It will allow you to enrich that detection with other data points. You can filter it down instead of having your people do that. Now let's take a look at the second detection. The second detection focuses on another technique we saw in attack, execution via PowerShell. It's a bit less noisy and more sophisticated, and probably something you've seen before. While this looks like a simple correlation with some time windowing, with PowerShell being launched by Microsoft Office and then making a network connection, remember, we're talking about streaming EDR telemetry. You can't put these things in memory. You can't search them through a couple of machines. You can't query them through a couple of machines. You need hundreds, if not thousands of machines. And one thing we do here is we distribute this query on many, many machines that get spun up instantly by the Google infrastructure. We use things like switches that optimize queries, optimize joins, and optimize how the data is being sent. We rely on a network that can throw all this kind of volume of data between the different nodes. And then that results in the fact that this query can execute through a vast amount of data super quickly. There's many things Google isn't good at, but one thing that we really shine in is that type of problem. So that means that I can do this correlation. 72 hours of data is searched with correlating over events that may have spanned days or hours or minutes, it doesn't matter, and returns in a few seconds. It's nuts, but it can do that. Now let's look at the third class of detection, something I like to call data-driven detection. This is something that can catch a lot more variances and a lot richer variations of the different attack techniques, which can change every day, by the way, though the different methods can change all the time. Here's where things like anomalies or prevalence come to play. Attackers often use very common tools, and they just kind of use them in a little bit of a weird way. One of my all-time favorite detection is looking at, obviously, PowerShell events, but PowerShell events connecting to a rare domain. Now, that's just one simple example you can do, but think of all the things you can do. Rare hash talking to rare domain, rare host receiving very high amount of data. Of course, if you have infinite money, you have talented engineers who can build a mini Google, that can theoretically work. But in reality, we don't see people run these types of detections. We see a lot of our customers wanting to do that, and this is why we built Detect. Companies, unfortunately, are stuck in a world of alert whack-a-mole because the tech can't even ingest, let alone make sense of the data. And any detection that is remotely interesting takes a really, really long time to run, and it becomes really intensive and really complex very fast. Chronicle is not just a cheaper, faster way to detect, analyze, and investigate the things you're used to. Yes, it will make you more effective than that, but more importantly, it will help you expand on that into the world of petabytes and into the world of infinite compute. Thanks for watching and happy hunting.
Thanks for that great demo, Svetla. Hope you all enjoyed that overview and demo of Chronicle Detect. Thanks for tuning in again, and our next security talk will begin in a few minutes.